Alright everybody, how are we doing today? We are racing against the rain. We do have some cumulo-ominous clouds up in the sky today, so today's series is going to be based on a question that I received through Meat Fires today on starting to address escapes from chokes. And since that's kind of in the same ballpark of what we're talking about already, let's go ahead and start to discuss that. Now, he specifically asked about sleepers and other chokes. So sleepers, generally, people are usually referring to a rear naked choke. So whenever we're looking at escaping from anything, whether it's a submission or a position, whatever it is, we want to go ahead, we want to start thinking about what does a person need in order to set up, maintain, and finish that submission, right? And so if we can start to break down any one of those points, then we're going to be able to start working our ways towards an escape, right? And so, when we're talking about the rear naked choke, as with any submission, right, we're picking it apart. And if you want to get good at defense, the first thing that you need to do is become good at offense. Right? So that's one of the reasons why I'm teaching you top control first. That's why I started teaching you submissions first before I started teaching you escapes. And that is so that you can actually practice, understand those positions, and then you can start working to start to pick them apart. So, the rear naked choke is only going to happen pretty much from the back mount, right? You could be in the top 4/4 and get basically to the back mount. They're just in the turtle position where you can sprawl out and get there, but it's all the same thing. I'm on the person's back. That's the only way I'm going to get this particular choke. So when I get to the back, if I'm just here and I've got my feet between his legs, notice my ankles are not crossed. I want to have my head higher than my opponent's, right? And if I'm sitting in this position, then I don't have to really worry about him starting to turn to escape that much, right? And so when I get to a back position, usually I'm going to have sort of this kind of grip, right? So I've got one hand on this wrist and the other hand on the forearm, and I'm kind of holding this, or I'm getting this figure 4 grip, right? I might also get to this position. Now the problem with this is if I start going for this choke right here, yes, he's going to start burying his chin, but he has this arm that he can start pulling this arm down, right? And so what I need to start to really, really solidify this choke is I need to start addressing this arm. So a lot of times what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a side. Now, I'm underhooking on this side, so he can still flatten out, right? So I would put my head on this side of his body, right? Even if I'm maintaining my feet between his legs, which I usually won't at this point, I'm going to keep my head below his head. And this is so he doesn't start to flatten out and turn down. Because if there's not an arm coming over the seatbelt on this side, I can start to come down and start to turn into my opponent, right? And then maybe I can start coming into a mount or a side control position if I can start to get my shoulders on the ground rather than on my opponent, right? And I get flat, and then I can start turning in. I don't think I'm going to make it to finish the raid. We'll have to finish this playlist inside. But, right? So when I get into this position, if I have an underhook on this side that I'm falling down to, right, my head has to be down here, right? And whenever I'm on the back, I'm connected to my opponent. My shoulder's into their shoulder. My head is glued to their head. This is for multiple reasons. One, so I don't lose teeth, right? If he has room to buck, then he can headbutt me and whatnot. But if I'm glued to him, he can't do that as well, right? Usually from here, I'm going to put my foot kind of like a seatbelt going across his abdominals and hooking onto his thigh, the thigh that would be on this side, right? This one, I'm going to put my foot, usually my arch or my heel, right into his iliac crest, that bony part of the top of your pelvis, right? So from here, I'm going to start threatening this choke. A lot of times what he's going to do is he's going to start reaching up, trying to defend this choke. And I really need to sell this, right? Because I want him to pull hard. Now, if I took this arm and I just tried to pass it back this way and get it stuck behind his back, right? If I just did it, he's going to resist. I'm not going to be able to do that very easily, right? So if I start threatening this choke and he really starts pulling down on my arm, now he's
primed to go with me, so then I'm going to be able to pass that, right? So I need to get him to give me the momentum to block his arm back there, right? Even if I did force it, usually I can't get it far enough back that I can start hooking it with my leg. So that's one way that you're going to start to defend this. Now, the thing is that, you know, in the case of the person who messaged me, you know, the only defense he thought about was lowering his chin. And we talked about this when we talked about the rear naked choke, is that when I finish this, right, I'm going to implode and bring my elbows together. So I'm crushing in here. And the arteries are here on the side of our necks, a little bit on the anterior position. When I put my chin down, I'm not sure if you can see this, but here are the arteries, right? The width of my chin might protect it a little bit. It might make it a little bit of a slower choke, but you can still get choked out if what I'm doing is closing up that angle on the side of the neck, right? So if I'm here and I start to collapse down, right, and pinch my elbows together, I'm closing up on the side of the neck. So even putting your chin down isn't necessarily going to prevent you from getting choked out from a rear naked choke. So if I get into this position, right, I've got this seatbelt position. The first thing that you want to do is, if you can, if I've got the seatbelt on the underside, is try to get your head on the bottom side here so that you can start working your way out and turning into me, right? So that's your first defense there. Don't let me even get started with the choke. Now, the thing is if I take this hand and I get across here, I can finish this choke. I can grab my own shoulder here. I usually try to grab onto my trapezius, and I can finish this with just one arm. So a one-arm rear naked choke or sleeper is totally a thing. So you do have to worry about this. You do have to fight this coming in. Now, you might not have access to defend with this arm because I've got this bottom hand defending that or holding onto that, so you can't defend already. So, yes, this is going to be your first line of defense. Now, I would almost say that, you know, and let's just go ahead and flat out say it. When you are trying, if you're in the front of back mount, you know, my hands are going to be here, right? I'm going to be blocking the path. So if he's holding under here and holding on my wrist here, this is my only arm, but I don't have to really worry about him coming around this way because he's using this arm right now. So from here, what I want to do is I want to block him coming in and getting around my neck in the first place. So I will keep my hand here. If I can get my wrist here, that's going to be even better, right? Because I'm trying to create that space so he can't get in. My shoulder's blocking that space. I'm doing everything I can so he can't slide his arm in, right? So there is no choke if he can't get onto the artery on this side. So that's my first line of defense. If I start grabbing onto his arm, you know, usually the reason why I'm doing that is because I was too late in defending the neck here, so he was able to start to get that arm in and start developing that choke. So that's going to be the first thing is really, besides like just escaping from the back position, but you know, when he starts thinking about going for the choke, and you know, I'm assessing the back position, right? What is the first thing everybody's going to go for in the back position? A rear naked choke. The arm bar is a movement away from the back mount position. So, you know, that's usually not the first attack people go for. They usually go for this rear naked choke. So if I know he's going to choke me, I'm going to be here, right? I'm going to be defending my neck any way that I can so that he can't get that arm around. Okay? So there's your first defense, besides escaping. If this starts to break down, right, and maybe he's able to start pulling my arm down so that he can maybe be able to get a path. And, you know, if he's going to do that, then one of the things that is common in setting up a rear naked choke, right? So I've got this arm down here and it's holding onto his wrist. I'm going for this, but he's blocking all this shit, right? He's blocking on this side. He's very cognizant of this arm because it's the one that is free to start choking him, right? Now, granted, sometimes I get in the back mount this position, right? Now I've got my arms preventing him from getting flat on the ground. Maybe I'll be holding on to this one. Maybe I've got this one. It depends on how I got here and what I'm trying to go for. But now I've got the seatbelt grip, right? I might even be just here, right? Now this is the choking arm. This is the one that he has to worry about. So we have to identify which arm he's going to be attacking with. So if I've got this position and I start to slide in, but he's blocking that path, then I need to either get that arm down or I need to start using the bottom arm. Does that make sense? So if I'm doing this, you know, and he's paying attention, maybe I'll grab this one, right? Maybe I'll pitch it onto this one, right? Maybe I'll, you know, somehow get to the point where I can remove this arm, right? So I get whatever control I can, and now I'm going to back out, and then I'm gonna make a blade, and I must come around on this side to start getting that choke, right? So whatever control I could get, I'm gonna use that. So just food for thought there. So you're not completely out of the woods if I'm holding on here, right? Because my opponent's probably going to be finding a way, if I can't get this arm in, to back out and get this one in. So we do have to watch out for that. So, you know, this might be a better defensive position. My shoulder is shrugged here, my chin is buried into my bicep, my hand's blocking the path on this side. So he can't get in on this side, and he can't sneak out and get it on this side. So I'm blocking those paths. And those are very good ways of you to defend. But one of the things that people kind of tend to do when they get stuck in the bottom is they kind of accept that when you got in the back mount, you know, I need to defend this. And they stop thinking about escaping. Now, rule number one is don't lose, especially when somebody's on your back, right? But rule number two is going to be start getting out of the bad position, because as long as you're in that bad position, you're going to be threatened, right? So, you know, there's a range of motion in which, or position between the two of you, that is going to defend or decide whether or not somebody can attack a choke, right? So, ideally, their head is going to be naturally below mine. Their shoulders are below my shoulders. And this is going to be the position I want, right? So what's one of the reasons why, if I'm on here and I've got the underhook here, I don't want you flattening out and turning this way. Well, your head's and neck's too high up. I can't get it from there. If I'm here and the guy starts scooching down, is able to scooch down, I can't get it here either. So there's a definite range of motion that I need to be looking at in order to start getting this rear naked choke. So moving yourself down, you know, a lot of times, especially when I was still training in Maine, one of the ways that I would actually escape from the back a lot of times was, you know, if they just have the hooks in, right, or something along those lines, and they don't necessarily have a really great seat belt, I might like try to get rid of that underhook and start scooching down, right, so that I'm further between their legs. And the same rule is going to apply here as in the guard, because that's basically what we're kind of doing, is we might scooch down, turn around, and end up in the guard, or we might start working for an escape. So if I am starting to move my body towards his feet, then I need to start either trying to do like rolling in, maybe doing a knee cut pass. Maybe I'm going to try to get double unders, right? And remember, when I do double unders, both my elbows have to be underneath his thighs, or to the inside of his thighs, like deeply buried, before I move either one of my arms. Because if I get one arm in, one arm out, then I get stuck in a triangle. So, you know, that is one way that you can go, is you can start going around the legs and start treating it as a guard pass, right? Another thing is that, you know, we had, if my legs are between somebody's gate right here, one of the defenses I'm going to use from the back, but if I can, I might take my foot up and put it on the downside foot, and I'm going to move it off onto the ground. Now from here, I can lift up my hips and hop to the other side of it, right? So even if, you know, they've got a pretty good seatbelt up top, right? Now my hips are outside the guard. They don't necessarily have the control that they had, right? So I can start to work my way out, start coming into a top control position, and I'm starting to get away from that rear naked choke. But as I mentioned before, this is my position that I usually hold for the back. is I've got this as a seatbelt around their waist. This is blocking their hips so they can't come up. So they're going to have a hard time flattening out and turning in from this position, regardless of what's happening up here, right? Depending on where my seatbelt is, right? So, you know, we have to start to work about how am I going to get this bottom leg down. One way that you can do it, guys, is that you might, you know, do something to prevent this leg from coming as a seatbelt and switch sides, right? And then you can hop over this one because your opponent may not have an opportunity to start to adjust that, right? They're going to have the opportunity, a half truth, but you're trying to shift that position and get out of that position before they have an opportunity to create that lower seatbelt. And the reason why this is up so high is because I don't want them to be able to hop over it easily. Now, the last thing I'm going to give you for this, guys, no, it's not. But I guess I'm going to make this into 2 videos here. So the last thing I'm going to do when I'm talking about escaping from this position, if my weight is fully on this thigh, right? So he's got this seat belt across me and he's completely committed here. He hasn't triangled up, right? If I start to move my hips heavy on that thigh, what I'll do is I'll move down closer to that knee, right? And if I can start cutting across here and forcing him to straighten out that leg, right? So that then I can start to hop out. So by grinding across this with my hips and with my sides, I could potentially get this open a little bit, right? Now, you know, if I'm stuck here, he might have this seatbelt grip. I have this arm free, but, you know, I'm using my shoulder to block for a moment. I might, you know, use my hand to start breaking those defenses down, but I have to be insanely careful about that because in order for me to do that, I have to start giving up a lot of my protection on my neck, and I'm just relying on this shoulder-chin connection here, right? So be very, very mindful of that. Now, I think this is going to be short, so I'm going to go ahead and do it right now. One of the things I told you guys was when you are setting up a rear naked choke and I get this arm across, right? And again, I can grab my own shoulder or even my opponent's shoulder, and then I can start to implode in and, you know, do a little bit of a bicep curl there, and I can still finish that choke, all right? So it's not that, you know, once this arm's across that, you know, as long as you defend this other arm, you know, you're in the clear. You're not. You're definitely in a choking position, and it can definitely still be a very problematic thing. But one of the things that I see a lot, and it's really common in pro wrestling, and I see people that have not trained before do it a lot, is that when they set up the rear naked choke, and this is just like if somebody's punching you like this, right? This big long swing, what's going to happen if you're making this big movement that's coming around the side? Well, it's going to be very easy to block, it's going to be very easy to dodge. So if I get this arm across and I want to bring this one out, I don't go like this, right? Wow, because if somebody's trying to do that, oh, I can catch that, right? I can catch that, and I know that it's going to be harder for him to finish if he doesn't have that second arm behind my neck, right? Now, coming back to pro wrestling, this is kind of the official way that you see people finish a rear naked choke. Does anybody see a problem with this? My hand is right here. It's very easy to start pulling this down, and because I'm not grabbing up here, I'm not grabbing your shoulder or anything like that to kind of get this choke here, I'm relying on getting this behind to actually finish that choke, and of course I'm going to go pinky down. It's just weird on a foam roller. So a lot of times the way that I'm going to set this up is I'm going to come around behind, and then I'm going to sneak my fingers into my bicep here, and I just already have that arm behind, right? So it's going to come around here, boom. But if somebody's not doing that, don't let them get this arm on top of your head, behind your head. Keep this one down because it's going to be part of the finish. Now, the other thing is that how do I finish a rear naked choke? Well, I implode. I don't explode. So getting yourself into a position where your opponent cannot do a crunch, not starting to implode there, guys, is going to help. Now,
granted, you know, the old school way that you would teach this, right, is I get into this position and I puff out my chest and I roll my shoulders back, right? Now, the reason why it's this, right, versus just pulling up and arching back is you see when I arch back, it lifts my elbows up, and if somebody's got their chin buried, they're gonna go up, and I'm not really doing anything to increase tension, and it's really easy to follow. If I start to arch up, well, they're gonna bridge, and I'm gonna end up on my back, and I can't arch anymore, right? So, imploding rather than exploding is gonna be a lot more efficient. So, this is a lot more long-winded than I wanted it to be, but, you know, preventing this arm from coming over is going to be kind of your step one. You've already failed at stopping this one from coming over, right? And I know that if I can get something here, then he's going to be able to finish. Now, granted, if my arm is here and this one's coming around here, I might have this arm trapped, but you still have an arm here, right? And so you can start defending with this arm, right? You can start bringing this down, or you can start blocking that one, right? But the last thing I'm going to leave you with on this, guys, is that once you start breaking down these attacks and you start building up those defenses, your goal should still be, well, don't get submitted, right? Don't get choked, but should still be attacking. So get what level of control you can over your opponent who's trying to choke you, and you know, get that control, but don't let that completely distract you from your escape game. Does that make sense? That might be bad advice, and I might get yelled at by brown belts or black belts for saying that, but generally speaking, I think it's quite true, right? Because a lot of times, remember what I said about being in guard, right? Or pulling guard. I'm going to be breaking your posture down constantly so that you're not spending your time trying to defend or escape. Right? I'm trying to develop control over you by breaking down your posture constantly. The same thing is going to be true of somebody who's just taking your back, right? So I want to control this, and if you are constantly breaking down my control and starting to build that escape, I'm not going to be focused on choking you if I know anything about what I'm doing, right? I might, if I'm here, absolutely. You can try to escape all you want. I've already got you. But you know, if I'm here, if I'm still trying to snake this around, and you are constantly trying to escape, I'm going to be going back to this, right? I'm going to get this control. I'm going to get whatever control I can to keep you in that position rather than attack you. So there's your rear naked choke defense for today. All right, let's move on.